Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to put a part of the galaxy into a serving board. Alright then, so we're going to start off with this live edge piece of black walnut, and what we're going to want to do is just start cleaning up all the edges. Luckily on this board here there's not a lot of bark left over, so we'll be able to get most of the work done here with the orbital sander. And I'm just using some 80 grit sandpaper here and the edge of the orbital sander, clear off any of the remaining bark from the wood. And once we get the live edge all cleaned up there, we're just going to break out the track saw and cut everything in half. Next, what we want to do is get the boards to the rough width we want them, and then start damming everything up to prevent any of the resin from leaking out. And to do this, I'm just using some hot glue around the perimeter of the boards, as well as some PVC board to dam up both sides of the opening. Now, I'm only using PVC board because I had it on hand. You could use about anything to get this done. Scrap pieces of plywood or 1x2s. Melamine board will work just as good too. I will say, depending on the material that you're using, you might want to seal it up with some tuck tape or paste wax, just to help ensure that the resin's not going to stick to it. Now I'm also using some latex caulking around the perimeter of the live edges. I'm doing this to help retain any of the spillover of the resin that may happen once we start pouring. The hope is this will make sanding a little bit easier when it comes to it. And we're also going to add a little bit of paste wax just for good measure. Now to get the space effect that I'm going for with this resin pour, everything's going to have to be done with multiple pours. So we can consider our first pour to be the backdrop of space, by which I mean we're just going to pour some black resin. And once our first pour is done, we're going to pop all the bubbles that have risen to the surface with a blowtorch, and then just leave everything to set up. Now that everything's all cured up, I'm going to go ahead and take some 320 sandpaper and scuff up the surface. Now I'm doing this for when we start pouring the next layer. It's going to help create a mechanical lock between the two layers of resin. I'm also going to take a clean cloth and some methyl hydrate to clean up any debris that was left over from the sanding. Now we're going to get ready to throw down some stars, but before that we want to mask everything off. Now to do the stars, I'm just using an old can of spray paint I had lying around that was a little bit past its prime, as you can see here. And the method I'm using to lay out the stars is just putting some spray paint to one hand and flicking it onto the surface with the other. There's definitely better ways to do this, but this is the way I ended up doing it. The lack of forethought and laziness was definitely overshadowed by the amount of cleaning I had to do when all was said and done. Once the paint for the stars was all dried up, it was time to add a nebulous effect. So to do this, what I did was I first poured in a thin layer of clear resin. Once I got that poured in, I tinted up a couple small batches of resin with some mica powder, making sure not to use too much, as I wanted to keep a decent amount of transparency with this. Then I just poured it into the clear resin, keeping the patterns as random as I could. After that, I just started pushing the resin around using a heat gun. I did this to help blend all the resins together, giving everything that sort of nebulous space look, and it has the added bonus of popping all the air bubbles. Now, just like before, we're going to want to scuff up the resin with some sandpaper, so our next resin pour is something to bite onto. Now I want to add a couple planets to the space scene here, so I just so happen to have a vinyl cutter which I used to make the stencils for this. I'm starting out with just a couple of circles, laying those down in the position that I want the planets to be in, and then masking everything else off with some green tape. I didn't really have an overall plan with how I wanted to paint these planets here, so I started just by blocking everything out with some white. After that, I threw down some stencils representing the land masses, and went over everything with some black. This was a bit of a mistake, because once I went back to start painting out the colors I wanted to throw into the landmass here, it ended up covering up the black base that I had put down. This is just another little bit of lacking of some foresight, but it's paint, so it's all easily fixable. I just masked up my landmass again, and painted out the parts that I wanted black one more time. It's a little inconvenient, but at the end of the day, not really that big of a deal. And just to break up the crisp lines a little bit, I just took a crusty old brush and dabbed in a little bit of black paint. After I was happy enough with all of that, I masked out both the planets with another circle of vinyl and gave them all a little bit of a light blue glow in an attempt to make everything look a little bit more space. And just like a couple steps back, we're going to pour in another thin layer of clear resin and then add in a little bit more resin tinted with the mica powder. The idea here is to just layer up the effect a bit more, giving everything a little bit more dimension. And once that's all poured in, we're just going to hit everything with a heat gun and let that resin set up. And in the never-ending repeating of steps, we're just going to scuff everything up with some 320 sandpaper, clean it all up with some methyl hydrate, and finish up our final pour of clear resin. Then hit that all with the blowtorch, popping all the surface bubbles. Now that everything's all cured up, it's time to start the initial cleanup. So I'm just using an old paint scraper to scrape off as much of the latex caulking as I can first. Then with some 80 grit sandpaper, I'm going to take my orbital sander and just take the time to sand all the resin level with the wood itself. Now if I had a planer, this would go a lot faster, or if I brought this over to the router table, but I really couldn't be bothered with that for such a small piece, so we're left with the sander. Next up, what I want to do is add a bit of shape to this board and also give it a handle. Now for the handle, what I did was I 3D printed and modeled this handle template here with PLA. So I'm going to use this to both trace out the shape onto my board, as well as to use it as a template for my router. Now after I got the shape traced out onto the board, I went ahead and cut it all out using my jigsaw. Once that was all said and done, I took some double-sided tape and taped my 3D printed template down to the board, and then used my router to finalize the shape. And now we got some more sand to do. So here I'm just cleaning up the overall shape of the handle, as well as the opposing end of the board. I'm just doing this over on the spindle sander. Not a whole lot more to say about this, so let's move on. Alright, we got some light at the end of the tunnel here. Now that all the edges have been sanded with the spindle sander, I'm going to go over all the edges top and bottom of the board with a 1/4 inch round over bit on the router. This will just soften up the edges a little bit and help give everything a more finished and polished look. And the last thing to do before we add some board oil to this project here is to just give everything a final sand. Now normally I'd sand up to a 220, maybe 400 at the most, but since we got a space scene going on here, I want that to be visible. And if I stopped at 400, the clear resin would still be a bit foggy. So we're going all the way up to 1500 with this one. And that should give us the nice clear look we're going for here. Now that we're all done sanding, I've wiped everything down with some methyl hydrate just to clear off any debris left by the sanding. Now I'm going to go ahead and get some board oil all over this project and let it soak overnight. And when I come back the next day, I'm just going to wipe off any excess oil that may be on the board and rub in some board butter to finish everything off. If you're at all interested in learning how to make your own board butter, I do have a quick video showing you how to do that on my channel if you want to check it out. And there we have it. She's all done, ready to serve some space cheese or something. Anyways, if you've made it to the end, I really want to thank you for being here. I hope you got something out of the video. And if you did, maybe consider giving a like and subscribe to the channel. Anyways, that's about all I got for this one. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.